All right, good morning, everybody. So today we are going to do something a little bit different. If we were in school, this is something I would do with you. So before we start, I wanted to talk to you about something called traditions. A tradition is something that you do every year. It's something maybe your family does, maybe that you do at school, maybe something that your grandma started or great-grandma. So in our family, we have a tradition that involves baking. And it all started with this bowl. So this bowl is a very old bowl, and it's a very special bowl. It's a bowl that my grandmother used to use to make Easter bread. And my grandma was from a country called Poland, which is in Europe. So every year at Easter, we made something called Babka. And Babka is a special bread. So I thought today, wouldn't it be fun for me to share a tradition with you and teach you how to make a babka. Now, as I'm making this, I want you to watch and I want you to remember what I'm doing, because when it's all done, what I would like you to do is to write me a story about how I made the babka. We've practiced that. It's called procedural writing. You tell me how to do something. So watch what I do. If you need to rewatch the video, that's fine, and write a story about how to make babka. And maybe you could talk with your family about traditions that you have or that you might do. So before we start, I want to teach you some new words. So look over here. Madeline is helping me videotape. These are baking vocabulary words. They're words that you've heard us talk about, but that you might not know. The first word is rise. Now we know when you rise, you get up, but when you bake, you need sometimes to let dough puff up. That's called rising. And when we bake our babka today, there's going to be a couple hours that we're not going to see what happens because the dough is going to rise. The next one is zest. This is an orange, which you all know. This is a tool called a zester, and it's got little sharp circles on the top. So zest is this. It's the skin of an orange. And when we make babka, we put the skin of an orange into it for some flavor. The next one is soak. Put in liquid. If you hurt your hand, sometimes mom might say soak it in some water to help it feel better. If you hurt your back, you might soak in a bathtub. In babka, we soak raisins in water. And when we do that, it helps them plump up and get nice and big and juicy for our babka. All right, the next word is knead. Now you might say, Miss G, that's not how you spell need. This knead is not like you need to go to the store. This knead is what you do with bread. You mix it with your hands or a special tool, and that puts air into your dough that makes it rise up. A babka is what we're making, and it's a Polish bread, and we always have it around Easter time. These are cooking words. A small t equals a teaspoon, and this is a teaspoon. If I wanted a tablespoon, it would be bigger. I don't have one of those out here right now, but a tablespoon is a capital T. And the last word I want to teach you is the word yeast. Yeast helps dough rise, and I have a package of it right here. So whenever you make bread or pizza dough or donuts, you need to use yeast. And if you look over here, I have it in a bowl. You put it with some water and some sugar, and you know it's working when it starts to puff up. If you make bread that doesn't puff up, it's going to be like eating a rock, and nobody wants that. All right, so now friends, look up here for one more minute. Here is our recipe for babka. The first thing you need to do is read a recipe, and you need to read it carefully, because if you don't, sometimes you're going to make a mistake. The first thing was to take 2 cups. This C stands for cup. 2 cups of milk and 2 sticks of butter. Now look over here. Heat in pan. You don't just throw it in the bowl. You heat it in a pan, not too hot. If it's too hot, when I mix it with the yeast, it's going to have the yeast stop working. The next thing, and I did this morning so it wouldn't take quite so long. You take 1 pack of yeast like I showed you, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and a half a cup of warm water. And you mix it in the bowl, and I showed you that. I know that's working because it's puffing up. See how it's getting higher? So this is all done and this is done. Now the next thing we're going to do, and I'm going to trade spots with Madeline. Madeline can come on over on this side. It calls for 4 eggs. Now when you break an egg, you don't want any of the shells in here. And you know that an egg is an oval. So it goes 1 egg. The what yellow part in the middle is called the yolk. And we're going to do something special with that yolk in a minute. 2 eggs. 3 eggs. 4 eggs. And this calls for a lot of eggs, but watch this. It does not want the white part. It says plus 2 more yolks. So this is what you do. You crack it open, and then it's kind of like you play a game, and you tip it one way, then you tip it the other way. It's called separating an egg. So there goes 1 extra yolk, and it called for 2 extra yolks. I'm going to do 1 more. Crack it. Don't get those shells in there. Open it carefully. You can see it as 2 halves. And then I'm going to tip it, get rid, whoop. All right, that one we're going to leave. Miss G obviously will never be on a cooking show. I'm going to try 1 more. Let's see if this one works better. There we go. So now we have 2 yolks plus 4 eggs. I'm going to move this over. Now this is very important, friends. I have to wash my hands because eggs can have germs in them. So you never want to eat raw eggs or get that egg germs anywhere else. All right, so back we go. So when I check out my recipe, I know that I needed to have my 4 eggs with my 2 egg yolks. Now this is a wonderful thing. This is my mixer. This is what I'm going to use to put on. This is the tool. And I'm going to turn it, hopefully. Then I'm going to put the bowl on just like this. And my ingredients, that's what they're called, are going to go in here. So there go my 6 eggs. And I'm going to turn it on, and it's going to start beating it. Now the next thing it says is I need to add, I'll pull it up so Maddie can see in there. It says I need to add some sugar, and I need a 1/2 cup of sugar. This is a whole cup. This is a 1/2 cup. We've learned about fractions. 2 halves make a whole. But I only need a 1/2 cup. So I'm going to get my sugar out right here, and I'm always checking my recipe to make sure I don't mess it up. When you measure, it needs to be flat. If it's rounded, it's too much. If it's concave, which means it comes down, it's too little. So in goes the sugar. So now we have eggs and sugar. The next thing it tells me is that I need some vanilla. Now we've cooked with vanilla, and I've let you smell it before, and it smells delicious. Here, I'll put it over here, pretend you're smelling it. The vanilla is going to give it some flavor, and it says put in 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Now, I always used to tell my girls, when you measure, make sure you don't measure over the bowl, because if you mess it up, it's going to have too much or too little in that bowl. And you know what I do sometimes, just because I like the taste of vanilla in it, I put a little bit more in. Alrighty, so now we have the eggs, the sugar, and the vanilla. Now here comes the hard part. It says to add 1 cup of flour, and wait until you see how much flour we add. We start with 1 cup, and again, shake it, make sure it's flat. Flour is powdery, it's white. Those are the properties, and I lift it up because sometimes it puffs up. So in it goes. And we're going to let it start to stir for a minute. You can see that it's mixing it all up. And the last thing that I put in right now is 1 teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to pour, definitely pour this not over the bowl, because then it would, if I dumped some in, it would be way too much. Alright, so now I need to get a spoon, and we get a little bit of the flour off the edges. Alrighty. Now the next thing we have to do is we have to add the milk. I'm checking my recipe. I don't make this very often. I just make it at Easter. All right, so in it goes. Now this can't be too hot, so I do it slowly. So in it goes. So this is the butter and the milk that I heated up this morning, so it wouldn't take us too long to do. And I'm going to let that beat for a minute. If it's too hot, remember I told you it will kill the yeast. The yeast is here, and look at how high it is. So I think this is going to make a great babka. All right, and I'm going to fill the bowl. Sometimes I can tell if it's too hot, just like that. I'm very carefully going to dump the yeast in. Make sure you get all of it off. All right, so now you can see, that doesn't look like it's ready. Look at that. I could pour that in a bowl and eat it with a spoon. So that means I have to go back to my recipe and see what's next. So we put in the milk and the butter. We put in the yeast, the sugar, the warm water, the eggs, the egg yolks, the vanilla, the flour, the salt. Now what we have to do is add another 3 cups of flour. I told you this recipe has a lot of flour. So back I go. Before I start adding this, I'm going to show you something. I wish you were here to help me count, friends. You're always my helpers for that. I'm going to stop you for just a minute, and I'm going to switch the tool I'm going to use. This is a beater or a mixer, but now that I'm adding so much more flour, I'm going to need something that kneads it. Remember, kneading means it's going to mix the dough. So I'm going to put in 1. Good thing Madeline's there. She'll keep track too for me. Uh-oh, I ran out of flour. That bag is empty. So I'm going to move it over here. And I had another bag. I borrowed this from Megan. Megan's going to make cookies all week. All right, here's 2. And 1 more is going to make 3 cups of flour. Remember, they're nice and straight, so we know we have the right amount. Okay, here we go. We'll put it on low. Sometimes if you turn it too high, it puffs up and puts flour all over the counter. Let's lock it. And you can see it's getting thicker. We're starting to make dough, and it's starting to get a little bit thicker. So we have to let that mix for a minute. While it's doing that, I looked at my recipe, and you're not going to believe this. It says add 4 more cups. So we're going to add 2 at a time. So I'm going to stop it. I'm going to lift it up. We're going to add 1. 2. So while it's mixing, friends, again, this is a tradition. This is something my family does every single year. Madeline knows how to make it. Megan knows how to make it. And most years what we do is I have my little nieces, Heidi, Caroline, and Emily come over. And my mom, they call their grandma MM, and they all come over and we all make it together. But this year we're trying to keep everybody healthy. So we're making it, and we're just going to let people pick it up off our front step. But again, this is a tradition. So I hope that you will talk with your families about traditions you have. Another tradition we had is later today, Madeline and Megan are going to color some Easter eggs. If you don't have color at home, you can hard-boil eggs and you can color them with a marker. You could have mom or grandma or dad look in the refrigerator, and sometimes you have something that you could put in water that helps color it, like purple cabbage, and that will make it look pinkish or purplish. So that's another tradition that we do. All right, so friends, you can see now when you look at it, that dough is looking pretty thick. It's got all the flour in it, and we're just going to let this mix up. I'm going to turn it up a little, and the last thing we have to do is put these raisins in. I'm going to let Madeline show you that for a minute while I dump this water out. Oh, you know what I forgot, my friends, though? We have to stop it for 1 minute. I did forget the zest. Now, I washed this orange this morning. You never want to do zest into something if you haven't washed it, because we know that the skin or the outside of fruit can be dirty, so you just want to make sure you wash it. So we put a whole bunch of that in it and it makes it taste really yummy. All right, and then I'm going to take a big handful of our raisins and I'm going to sprinkle them over it. Now I'm going to make another one of these later because Megan especially, and I don't know about Madeline, do not like the raisins in it. so we'll make another one. All right, so on it goes. You can take one more peek in there. Oops. All right, and then one last thing we're going to do right now, friends, before I shut this, I'm going to take my grandma's special bowl, and I'm taking some butter, and I put it inside of it, so when I put that dough in it, it does not stick. So what I'm going to do is stop this now. I'm going to put this into the bowl, and this is a little silly. I put a warm towel on it, and it sits. And it sits for a long time until it gets really high and puffy. So I'm going to stop the video. Check back later because I'm going to show you how the bread puffed up high. We'll put it into pans and bake it. So I hope you liked how I made that. I will see you in a little bit with our finished product. All right, guys, so here it is. Here is our finished Easter babka. I hope you liked learning about it. I hope you remember our vocabulary words about kneading and yeast and rising. And I hope you think of this on your Easter and know how much Mrs. Frere, Mrs. Bowman, and I all miss you. So when you finish your video, shut all this off, sit down, write a procedural piece for me on how I made the babka. What did I do first? What did I do next? What did I do last? And maybe your last sentence could be something about how you think it tastes. So have fun writing it. Have a great Easter. We'll see everybody next week on Zoom and on YouTube and on Dojo. Bye-bye.